Hi, I'm Anna, and I'm a doctor. So I hope you're watching this from the confinements of your home. And if not, you should probably go home right now. Help us to fight COVID-19. And to do this, you can take simple measures. Practice good hand washing techniques. You can also wear the appropriate protective gear, and then self-isolation. Now, I know that self-isolation sounds like a nuisance, but you know what's worse? Contracting as well as spreading the disease. So help us in fighting this disease. And finally, be responsible. If you're having symptoms, call the hotline and then go for testing. Help us to fight this.
Discussion, as usual, I would like to give the floor to the Honorable Deputy Minister of Health and Social Services, Honorable Dr. Esther Mwinyangwe, to give us a daily update on health.
Good morning, Tutu, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to give a brief health update. I will start with April 2020. Commerce region, we have 11 active cases. Karas, we have 1 active case. Erongo, we have 4. In total, 16. So in all 3 regions, we don't have new cases. And what is the situation when it comes to active cases? Commerce, we have 4 active cases. Karas, we have 1 COVID case. And Erongo, we have 3. So total 8 cases. Recovered cases, in Commerce region, we have 7 recovered cases. Karas, we have 0. Erongo, we have 1 recovered case. So the total of recovered cases is 8 cases. And so far, we have not any death-related, COVID-19 related cases. So that is, as far as the cases are concerned, no new cases, 8 active, 8 recoveries, and no death reported. Quarantine information, also per region. Kavango region have 1 person in quarantine. Omusati region have 8 people in quarantine. Oshana, there were 3, 2 were released, and we have 1 person in quarantine. Ohangwena had 35 people, 16 have been discharged, and we have 19 still in quarantine. Hartap was having 40, and all 40 were released, so we have no people at the moment who are quarantined in Hartap region. Oshodonjupa, we had 100 people in quarantine, 61 people have been discharged. So at the moment, currently, we have 39 people in quarantine. In Commerce region, 158 people were in quarantine, 147 have been released. Now we have 11 in quarantine. Zambezi region, 109 people were quarantined and 80 have been discharged. And currently we have 29 in quarantine. Karas region, 97 were in quarantine, 15 were also discharged, and we have 82. Erongo region, 28 people were in quarantine, 3 have been discharged, and we have 25. So the total number of people who were in quarantine was 579. 364 people were discharged, and currently we have 215 in quarantine facilities. Now this morning we will be listening to nutrition and food security. And I want to say that as Namibians, as we navigate these unique times or difficult times, the issue of food security has clearly become a challenge. We have seen that also over the weekend as people were storming the office of the Commerce Regional Councillor. I'm not aware of any evidence of contracting the coronavirus disease or COVID-19 as we know it now from touching food or food packaging that came in contact with the virus due to coughing or sneezing from an infected person. But what we know is that the virus can survive on surfaces and objects for a certain amount of time. And that is why we are encouraging our people to wash their hands on a regular basis, especially after touching frequently handled objects such as doorknobs and handles. And that is why we also encourage our people to maintain or to adhere to social distancing. Although we do not have concrete evidence regarding specific dietary factors that can reduce the risk of acute infections like COVID-19, we do know that eating a healthy diet, which is a challenge for many Namibians at the moment, or being physically active, managing stress, and eating or getting enough sleep are critical measures to keep our immune system very strong. And hence, the reason why this morning we are going to listen to the experts in the areas of nutrition and food security. I thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Mwinyangwe, for giving us an update on health, as well as giving us an introduction on the topic that we are discussing this morning, which is nutrition and food security during COVID-19. So today we are joined by 2 panel members that are going to take us through this discussion. We have Mrs. Charlotte Keita, who is a nutritionist and senior lecturer at the University of Namibia. And she is as well a founding member, board member of NAFSAN, which stands for Nutrition and Food Security Alliance of Namibia. Welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
We are joined by Mr. Ben Shanik, who is also a social worker and a director of the Secretariat of NAFSAN, the Nutrition and Food Security Alliance of Namibia. Welcome, and thank you for joining us, Mr. Shanik.
Thanks, good morning.
Okay, Mr. Shanik, maybe if I can just briefly start with you. Can you briefly tell us what is the difference between nutrition and food security and the relationship thereof?
Well, nutrition basically is about what we eat in terms of what are the nutritional components in the different food. And we refer to a healthy diet as a diet that is balanced with a lot of variety of food, so that our system really gets most nutrition to get a strong immune system out of it. In terms of food security, and Charlotte can say more on that also nutrition, it's the fact that we have food, that we have enough food on either a personal level, on a household level, or even on a whole country level. Charlotte, maybe you want to add?
Yeah, that is actually 100% correct. There's a difference in levels. You can be 100% secure as a country, and we have seen that, and that's why the ministries have told us in the beginning of this shelter time that you don't need to run and stock up because we are food secure. But that is, as our Deputy Minister of Health just said, that is now becoming a major challenge on household level. Because it's not only the food that needs to be available, it's also the access to food, and also not only normal access that you can go to a store or to a market that will be opening on Monday today, but also the ability to actually have resources available, financial resources, to actually purchase food. So it's a multi-sectoral approach. Food security is not just having enough food. You have to look at a variety of factors.
Okay. Charlotte, some people may have heard the words food safety and food security. Could you please explain the difference between the two words, and maybe you can give us a practical example?
I would. There is really a misunderstanding between food security and food safety. And as you have heard now, food security means the availability. And then we also have another word, nutrition security. That means that you have a variety in the diet to actually supply your body with all the nutrients that you need. And in contrast with that, food safety actually means, it refers to the handling, the preparing, the storing, and the best ways to reduce becoming sick from food. That you don't contaminate your food, and that you actually don't introduce organisms and things in your body that then cause other diseases. So the hand wash is important, but also the handling and the storing of the food and the preparation.
Okay, which one is best now? Is it to hand wash or to disinfect with the hand sanitizer? Since currently we are told to always sanitize our hands.
The best way still is washing your hands.
Okay.
And if you don't have water and soap available, because if you go somewhere, and it's not easy, not all places you have access to this, but I notice that we have more access now, then a hand sanitizer will work. But still the best way is the hand washing. And the hand washing, we will give practical tips for when you should wash the hands.
Okay. Mr. Shani, I see you are the director of a secretariat called NAFSAN. Can you briefly tell us what is NAFSAN all about and what role it plays in Namibia?
Yeah. So NAFSAN stands for Nutrition and Food Security Alliance of Namibia. And NAFSAN is an alliance of civil society, academia, the private sector, and also committed individuals in the area of nutrition and food security. And as the government of Namibia is in the process of re-establishing the Food and Nutrition Security Council under the Office of the Prime Minister, which is a national coordination body, NAFSAN, as an alliance of those other players, will play a critical role as a partner to government in terms of bringing in the views from civil society, academia, and private sector, but also to offer help in coordinating and information sharing around how we as a nation can become more food secure, but also to ensure that we have the right nutritious food, the right variety of food, so that we really have a healthy and food secure nation. And our role is that not of an implementer of activities, but to rather be a network of members who are implementers, who are helping one another, and us helping government and developing a collaborative relationship around food security and nutrition as the basics for us as human beings to work together.
Okay. Ms. Keita, what are the basics everyone should know about or try to practice when it comes to good nutrition?
We are very fortunate in Namibia. Many years ago, we have already approved a basic set of food guidelines and nutrition guidelines. And what we've done as NASFAM, we just dusted them off and linked them to COVID. So all these things that we're supposed to do, nutrition-wise, are still important and even will be important after, hopefully soon, COVID departs. But very important for any diet is a variety of food. Variety is the word that you will hear nutritionists and dietitians always will use. Variety, eat at least 3 meals a day, a lot of fruit and vegetables, and we are lucky now that we have a lot more vegetables available in Namibia that is homegrown that we need to support. Beans and meat regularly in the diet, and then of course eat a lot more fish. If we look at the data on how people purchase, they actually spend a lot more money on cooking oil than they are spending on fish. And we still need to keep that message going. Include more fish in your diet. Then obviously we need to stay away from all these white and processed meats, and we love it. I know if I talk to the students in the class, that's the first thing they will tell you. Whole grain products, your mahangus, your maize porridge, your brown bread, all those things that are not refined and sifted, that it is only a very light flour remaining. And then we should also take note that some of these staple foods that we buy we should read the labels and see if they are fortified, so that we can, because during some of the processes in food manufacturing, some nutrients are removed. But we are very lucky that the maize that we actually buy here in Namibia is actually fortified. So your reading of your labels is important. Then use your salt sparingly. And I know this is also something very important in the diet of Namibians. They love savory foods, but use it sparingly because it introduces a lot of other health problems that then at the end weaken your immune system again. But it's very important to remember, very early on, our first legislation around food and nutrition was on the iodization of salt. And we need to continue to carry out that message, because that's a very important message. Many people associate iodine only with goiter. But one of the biggest issues for us is the cheapest way to actually help and assist with physical and mental development of children, even during pregnancy.
Yeah.
And Ben, would you take some of the things that we need to avoid?
Yeah, so one thing I just want to also say, that it's interesting that this knowledge, this wisdom around food has been around for a while and sometimes have been preached for a while. Yet I feel this situation around the COVID-19 forces us to really look at the basics and see how can we strengthen ourselves from within and how can we take care of others who may not be able to do so. And there are a couple of things we also can do in addition to what we should do, things we should avoid. And number one is really alcohol, because alcohol really has a devastating effect on our immune system, plus it also influences our behaviors in some ways that we become less careful. So I think government has taken a good step in stopping alcohol, although it might have been painful for some. But it's a good opportunity, I think, to self-reflect whether I really need that high intake of alcohol on a daily basis. Smoking, especially with a virus that's affecting the lungs, I think that's really something to consider stopping or reducing. Sugar again has a huge impact on the immune system, weakening it. A lot of times when COVID was treated, they used a lot of vitamin C, and sugar is counteracting to vitamin C, for instance, studies have found. Plus huge intake of sugar is not healthy for our bodies. And similar to what Charlotte said, let's use salt and oil really sparingly, because it also impacts us and our health. And I think health is currently one of the most valuable assets that we all have.
I need to add something, and this something that I would like to add is on breastfeeding. Because there's a lot of myths out there and a lot of questions. Actually, now is the right time to breastfeed. You are at home. You don't have to go back to work within 2 weeks' time. I don't know how long we will be at home, but at the moment you are at home.
Yes.
So use that opportunity to breastfeed. The virus is not transmitted through breast milk. And that is very important that you should remember it. And please plan to breastfeed as long as possible. Exclusive breastfeeding is according to our policy up to 6 months. And that means you should not include anything else than breast milk. And after that, we start introducing our complementary food. But you still need to continue up till at least 24 months. It gives additional, if you actually can see the list of things that are really in breast milk, you will be surprised. It actually is a very important role to play in the building of the immune system of the child, and also in the development, cognitive as well as physical. So if you want a clever child, breastfeed. And it also have very good, I'm a real campaign for breastfeeding. It also have major benefits for the mother. And if you can read more in the infant and young child feeding policy of the ministry, and that's available on the ministry's web pages.
Okay, all right. Mr. Shanik, earlier Mrs. Cater spoke about various food products that we should consume or that we should buy. How is COVID-19 impacted on food purchasing, perceptions of food safety, and why is nutrition and food safety important during this time of COVID-19?
I think one thing that I think we observed is that luckily there's no shortage of food in the shops, so there's no impact directly on that. However, how it impacts people is in terms of their job losses or reduction in salaries or other ways of not having an income, that people are not able to afford buying food. At the same time, we can see a rise in initiatives either by individuals, by groups, by companies, by the government to really make efforts to get food to people. And what I notice is that people are also more and more aware that it shouldn't just be one staple food, but it should be a variety of food, as Charlotte said, including fish, including vegetables. So whenever these packages of food are being put together and distributed, there should be this variety of food in it because it does strengthen our immune system. And my hope is that all of these initiatives really sustain themselves even after COVID, because what I think we can see is that COVID opened our eyes that the world before COVID was not fair and not equal at all. So I think what it does, it highlights that we have been living in a society that is highly unequal, where a lot of people could not afford food. But we also see the capacity of us as a society to be able to share and to provide. So it's not a matter of we don't have enough food, it's a matter of how it is distributed. And my hope is that we collaboratively as a society work around distributing that food. So I feel that is how COVID impacted our relationship to food and our realization that we really need to share more and to care more and to be more aware about food and to really make sure everybody is food secure and everybody has nutritious food on their table.
Okay, talking of the immune system, do you really think that we can really boost our immune system through food?
Yes. I mean, there's enough evidence that supports that a strong immune system can deal with infections and viruses. And I think research around the world so far on the COVID-19 has shown that mainly the elderly or people with medical conditions, pre-existing medical conditions, has been affected the most. So the more we eat a healthy food, the more stronger our immune system is, together with stress relieving meditation, physical exercise, to be out in the sun, which also gives us vitamin D if we are out in the sun for at least 15-20 minutes a day. Exercises, but also what we can do is to supplement. If you have the abilities, or even the government and the research group going on around supplementation, to see that we can supplement with multivitamins and multiminerals. Just make sure there are certain components in it like vitamin C and D, zinc, selenium. So these are the ones that are, have been identified as being helpful, although there is it's not a cure itself. It's really, and I think that's important, it's a way of strengthening our immune system, it's strengthening our capacity to respond, but it does not make us immune or protect us completely against it. It just helps us to go through it, and I think this is really important, that we as a nation are as strong and healthy as we can be.
Okay. Mrs. Keita, in your view, how could Namibia better integrate aspects of nutrition and food security in its response to COVID-19?
I think the first thing is, since I'm coming from an education background, is education, education, education. Sometimes when you have carried a message, analyze it. But through research, we know that you sometimes you have to hear messages more often to actually make it part of your lifestyle. And sometimes you also need to see evidence that something is working. And unfortunately, nutrition is not like a headache pill. You cannot just take something and tomorrow you are suddenly nutritionally secure. You have your immune system is strong. It's a process over your lifespan that you actually have to invest in and look after. So I think COVID actually did some of us a favor, because it brought some of these aspects to the foreground to say, hey, listen, what I've been doing all these times. Is it time to focus back on basic things like food and nutrition? And I need to say something that is very important. When we as nutritionists speak about malnutrition, we are actually referring to two things these days. We are referring to those that are undernourished, have all increasing in the country, and sometimes you find in a specific family that some of the members, so maybe we need to do some research. Are taken in Namibia, how obesity also reduce your immune system. And that's why we see that so many of these in other countries that have these underlying diseases are struggling because of overindulging at the other side. So it's a very difficult balance. It's not something that, and I myself must say, it's not something easy to achieve. But if you become conscious of what you are doing, I found really one of the things that it works to see what you are doing is if you start to keep a food diary. What am I really eating every day? And then compare that to the nutrients in food. Then you very quickly can see, I have a problem here. Too much of this and too little of that.
Okay. In your view, is it safe to buy food online and have it delivered at home? Or is it much safer for me to go to the supermarket and handpick and buy the food myself?
That's a very interesting question. I think if you can, and if it's possible for you, I think it could be safer to have it delivered to you. But that depends on, then we need to have proper regulations at the retailer side. So that is also very important. And keep on washing your hands. When they delivered it, wash your hands. Clean your surfaces after you've unpacked the food. You can even go so far as, if you feel it's not going to be safe, wash the containers in which the food are. So yeah, but it's not something that is so common in Namibia. It have started now, but yeah. But there's a lot of things that you can do also when you go out buying food, and we can do that at the end to look at some of the things that could help and assist you.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Ben, I'd like to
Yeah,
add.
just to also, it's similar to what the Honorable Deputy Minister said. There's no proof, or there's no cases where the virus was transmitted through food.
Yeah.
So I would in generally consider any shopped food or food parcels that are being donated as, I would consider them safe. Of course, it's good to wipe them off and to clean surfaces. And it also depends on your behavior when you go into the shop, whether that's safe or not. Because the shop is quite a closed environment with lots of people moving through the aisles. Maybe somebody coughed a minute before you went through there. So we would recommend also the wearing of masks, for instance, while shopping, just to reduce the chances of infecting somebody or getting infected. And basic hygiene standards, washing hands, sanitizing where hand washing is not possible. And again, I feel it's really a wake-up call for us, I feel, to have this crisis, because it really makes us focus back on the basics. And yeah, the situation hasn't been ideal before. Also, just to add, the cases of malnourished children in Namibia was almost 25%, while obesity rates amongst adults were almost 20%. So we really had an issue around food and nutrition security.
I just would like to add, you had
Just
asked...
before you add, I would like to open the lines for questions. If there is anybody listening at home or following the proceedings here at the center, the telephone number to call in the studio is 061 400 397. 061 400 397.
I just would like to add on what Bennett said earlier about supplementation. As a nutritionist, the first thing that you usually would say is get your nutrients from your food, and that you should have a balanced diet with all the variety and those kind of things in. At the moment, there is no single individual nutrient that have been lifted out for supplementation. And because there's a lot of things on web pages and myths and stuff going around. The current, even the United Nations family's current recommendation is if you want to supplement, it must be multivitamin mineral, and that includes everything.
Okay. Now, what happens to takeaways, food that is already processed and cooked? How safe is it for us to buy takeaways during this time of COVID-19?
I think, as far as I'm aware of, most of those places that produce food are having basic hygiene measures in place. So I would basically consider that safe. The question with takeaways that I would have is it nutritious? If I get a takeaway from a fast food shop, it's very likely processed food with not or hardly any vegetables in it. So I think that is a food that it may be safe in terms of the viral infection, but it has little value for me in terms of getting healthier from it and protecting myself in terms of strengthening my immunity. So I would think most takeaways are safe, yet some are more valuable for you than others. And the same with the food parcels for donations. So I really appreciate so many people and institutions putting parcels together and really see to add a good mix of foods into those parcels to really make sure that there's healthy food in it. And also on our website, which is currently still developing, we try to really provide as many information as possible. So for those who would like to have more information afterwards, you can click on nafsan.org, nafsan.org, just for people to have more of those food safety and nutrition guidelines. I thought that may be also good for people to inform on themselves.
Okay.
We have some material that will go out that we have prepared. So we have shorter messages, and you would have seen that on some of the websites. It's been going through NAMCOL, UNAM, and some other websites already. Just basic one-page information that is being translated now into most of the Namibian languages. Unfortunately, we can't do it in sign language. Maybe we need to do a little video on that. And then we have a longer document with more tips, and then we will soon have a little folder or a brochure also available to help and assist where we can.
Okay, we have a caller on the line, Hosea from Opuo. Good morning, Hosea. Hello? Hosea, good morning.
Yes, good morning, Steve.
Thank you for joining us. What is your question this morning?
Yes, good morning.
Yes, you can go ahead.
Oh, yes, I wanted to ask the panel in the center that this time for COVID-19, what type of food we need to eat so that we can having more power in our body?
Sorry, can you repeat your question,
What
please?
is the food that should be included that have more power?
Hosea?
Hello? Hello?
Okay, Hosea, can you please repeat
Yes.
your question?
I can't hear you.
Okay, Hosea, were you asking as to what supplements can you take to have more power in your body?
Food.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, caller. Miss
You want me
Charlotte,
I can answer that, yeah.
would you like to answer that?
I just would like to repeat what we have already said, and that is we will not single out a specific food.
Okay.
Variety. Your body's like an orchestra, so you need all the instruments, and we see them, the nutrients, as the instruments, and they all have to fire together or to play together. If you take in too much of the one, it will influence the other one. So the variety is very important. So there's no food that we will call a power food. Although you see a lot of these things on web pages, we say variety. And if you want to take a supplement, if you are fortunate enough, then it must also be what we call a MVM, multivitamin mineral supplement.
Okay. We have Benjamin on the line. Good morning, Benjamin. Thank you for joining us. What is your question this morning? Hello, Benjamin. Can you hear us?
Hello?
Good morning. Thank you.
Morning, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks. What is your question this morning?
Hello?
Hello, Benjamin.
Yes.
Can you please switch off your television set at home?
Hello?
Hello, Benjamin. Can you please switch off your TV? Okay. Sorry, we've lost that caller. Mr. Shanik, what can every Namibian citizen do towards food security and a healthier, more nutrient-secure diet?
I think everybody can see what is it in my life that I can leave out. So that comes at no additional costs. And I mentioned alcohol, smoking, too much salt, too much oil, too much sugar as one of the things, to leave out things that are not healthy or fast food. And then to see, can I increase my diet? Can I have a better variety of diet? Adding vegetables, also how we within the family, how do we make sure that especially the children have the most nutritious food? And one thing, when Charlotte spoke about breastfeeding, one of the reasons why breastfeeding is so important is that in the first 1,000 days of a child's life, or of everybody's life, what we eat is so much contributing to who we become later in life. There are even studies from other countries that it impacts the whole GDP of a country by up to 16% if children are stunted. And stunted means they are not growing as much, and also their brain development is not as much. So if we as families really can look after giving the best nutrition to especially the young ones, that would be another thing we could do. And especially those of us who are in the position of being easily able to buy food. I think we all, as more privileged Namibians, need to ask ourselves, what can we do to balance a system that is clearly imbalanced? And I really appreciate those initiatives that are popping up from private sector, individual groups, civil society, and government. And I think the key question where we all need to work together as individuals is, how can we sustain that? And if you have a bit of a backyard garden, can you do some gardening in a plant pot, have some tomatoes, have this, have chickens maybe here and there? It depends also on the regulations of where you stay, whether it's City of Windhoek or other places. But I think to have that education, awareness, and put things into practice, and to not lose the momentum when we come out of this COVID-19 situation is really important.
Okay, we have a caller on the line, Errol from Walvis Bay. Good morning, Errol. Thank you for joining us.
Hello.
Good morning. What is your question this morning?
I want to ask according the 750s emergency grant.
Excuse me, can you please repeat your question?
I want to ask about 750s about for the emergency grant. Last week, they said that people that were rejected or said that the name or ID number were wrong, they must go to the Kuchemoon Stadium here in Walvis Bay to record their names. But until now, there's no feedback.
Sorry, I think...
I can...
Thank you, Errol. I think he's asking about the emergency grant.
Yes, so we, as much as we cannot go into, we don't have the knowledge about the technicalities around the grant, but we do really recommend to use that grant money in the best way possible, for instance, about nutrition and food. And having a grant like this, in general, also has benefits on the long run. So that is maybe one of the things that we are discussing in terms of balancing inequalities. It may be something worth considering on the long run to have something like an emergency grant or like a basic income grant for the nation to make sure that everybody is in a position to afford the variety of food that we need to become a healthy nation. So unfortunately, we don't have the knowledge to sort the technicalities of that current grant, but we do believe that from a nutrition perspective and food security perspective, something like a basic income grant is really something that would make a huge difference.
Okay. Yeah, I would also just like to inform the caller that he can take up the question with the Ministry of Finance with regards to the EIG. Just send your email to covid.nam@mict.gov.na. We have another caller on the line, Tony from Windhoek. Good morning, Tony.
Yes, good morning. My question goes probably to Mr. Ben Shempe. I just want to ask, if we're speaking about food and nutrition security, this actually means that people being able to define their own food or having access to this nutritious food. Now, that at large for the country entails also the health department, education, agriculture. Now, but how far is Namibia from this, especially now after the COVID-19 crisis raised the significance of this? And what is the future plan for this? Like, especially people being able to define their own food. If we import a lot and all this, and the land for people to be able to define their own food and have access to nutritious food.
Okay, Tony, in brief, can you please repeat your question?
So the way forward?
My question is, during this COVID-19 crisis, if we're talking about people having food security, people being able to define their own food and have access to this nutritious food, how far are we, or especially now during this crisis and after this crisis, how far are we as Namibians for that?
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Ben.
I think the question is about how far are we food secure as a nation and what may be the way forward. I think on a country level, it shows us that we still have quite a dependency on imported food. So I think on that national level, there is more we can do in terms of ensuring that we, on the long run, will have enough food supply or food production locally. I think on an individual level, it also shows that there are many people that are food insecure. For instance, now that the schools are closed, the school feeding program can also not function as it used to, and we have a lot of children, and that's a great concern for us, to have even more children malnourished through this crisis. So it really shows us those imbalances, and we do not at this point in time have the answer for the way forward. But I think what we see emerging is that we really need, from different sectors, multiple stakeholders coming together to resolve that issues. We see a lot of private companies coming in, working with government, with individual citizens, with civil society initiatives. There's one initiative that put up, for instance, over 20,000 tippy taps to wash hands in the different informal settlements. There were companies setting up tanks of water to supply that. So we actually see that a lot is possible. So although we don't have the answers, I think one key to defining the answer is to continue collaborating and exchanging ideas and become active the way we are becoming active now, and to be informed about what we can do in terms of growing our own food, but also ensuring that the food we have is a variety.
Okay. We have a caller from Oshivarongo. Randy, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you for joining us. What is your question this morning?
My question this morning is, we were rejected for the e-learning, and when we sent our applications to NASA, they told us only e-learning students are supposed to be getting these applications.
Can you kindly repeat your question, please?
Now, how are we supposed to be coping here? Because we are named students and not all of us got, or none. I didn't get because I was rejected because I have a national beneficiary.
Okay, I think your question is related to, I had something like e-learning, but it's not related to the topic under discussion as we speak. So I would like to request you to kindly send an email to covid.nam@mict.gov.na, and it will be forwarded to the relevant authorities. Are there any members of the media in the hall that would like to ask any questions? You can just please walk to the mic. Okay, thank you.
Hi. Hello. I wanted to find out what is your estimation in terms of malnutrition in Namibia before COVID, and how has the pandemic sort of impacted that situation? And then it's 30 years since independence, and we still get cases or reports from places like UNICEF and so forth of malnutrition in Namibia. Why do you think that's the case? And then lastly, on GMOs, what is their impact on a balanced diet, and how healthy are they?
Take the GMO and second one.
Okay, Ms. Charlotte, would you like to respond to that?
I think we know from all of these United Nations reports that what the state is of nutrition, but there's also a lot of gaps in information. There's a lot of on a lot of the nutrients, we haven't done any research in the past years. So although we know that there's definitely a lot, even before COVID, that's going on certain levels of certain, like iron, we know that a large percentage of women in the reproductive age are actually iron deficient. And we have some policies in place to address some of these issues. But we were worldwide, definitely, COVID have a major impact on the side, I think, of food security. And the reason is not because there's not enough food available. There are some countries that are now even dumping milk because they don't have restaurants and things to deliver to. Their orders are now much less than before. But the bigger issue is financial, how to get to the food. Because a lot of people now have lost their income, or the income have been halved. And they still have to give nutritious and healthy food to the same number of family members as before. So I think this will be with us now for a much longer time. But I think COVID have brought this more to the forefront, so that we should start looking more, and we should talk to each other, and we should say, I have a problem, and report it to places where there is help available. Because there are also some families that now this happened to them the first time ever in their life, that now feel, you know, they feel helpless. So we need to help and support. And we should not forget our elderly people. I think they don't feature very much on the nutrition, under the nutrition spotlight. We really need also to have a look at them. What else? But I need to say something. There also have been a lot of things that we have been doing over the years, very positive things, and that are still continuing, and we should still continue to follow up and use. Like we have legislation on folic acid and iron for pregnant women. So we should continue to make sure that we get that support. We already have for the under fives. We have certain nutrient supplementation happening. We should continue doing that so that we don't relapse on that also, on the positives that we have already achieved. Because all is not negative, there's already a lot of positives. And one of the other positives is over the years, on specifically, I think vegetables specifically, we have managed to now produce a lot more for ourselves. And you can actually see it in the price of vegetables if you compare that to the price of fruit. We are not self-sustainable so much on fruit, but more on vegetables. And so you actually can see it. But the good news is we say 5 portions of fruit and vegetables a day for a balanced diet. And 3 of the 5 should be vegetables. So maybe that's good.
Yeah. And can I just quickly...
Is there any other journalist that would like to ask a question?
Could I quickly do the
Mr. Shanik,
Yeah,
would you like
I
to
think it is
add?
important that we do already a lot, and also the fish consumption and production has increased in that sense, as far as I know. Yet the malnutrition figures are still very critical over the years, and I think the 2 things that need to take place, and they are taking place now, is the realization, for instance, of a child that is well nourished has a brain that is developed to the normal size, while a malnourished child has a much smaller brain, and that really impacts our national development also. And that is why, for instance, the African Development Bank speaks of investing in human infrastructure. We do long-term investment in building roads, building highways, and that is important. Yet we also need to consider the 20, 30, 40-year impact of investing in nutrition. So that is shifting on the one hand, with government also establishing the Food and Nutrition Security Council, establishing a policy, an action plan, and to really coordinate, to have all the sectors that play a role in society to coordinate. And this is where I'm personally hopeful that we can do a shift now, because the understanding is there that this is really something we need to invest in. And secondly, that really requires coordination and passion from all the different sectors. And on GMO, just to quickly, there are really dangers in genetically modified food in terms of what nutrition is in there, but also the question, can you reproduce a genetically modified seed? And oftentimes it is not possible. So that goes back to food security. Can I plant the food that I want in my household? And that is a big question, and we are very concerned about genetically modified food coming in, whether that's through primary consumption directly or by being fed to animals and so forth. So that's something we would be very cautious about.
I just would like to add something that I've just recently started and that people also should take note of. Together with UNICEF, the Ministry of Health have now started, and it would have been launched in these days, and unfortunately the launch was now a little bit more silent. There is now a new program called Right Start. And there's already a web page for that, and that's rightstart.com.na. And this is specifically addressing this issue of to start early with a good nutrition, even there before conception, so that you deliver a healthy baby that have lots of opportunities in life, that have appropriate development, physical and cognitive development, so that we cut down on this stunting. I'm specifically focused on that. So Right Start. There is a lot of information. There's breastfeeding, nutrition, other developmental skills information available. So it's actually an integrated website.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Shanik, would you like to give us your concluding and final remarks?
Well, I think my final thought is really that COVID-19, the situation as it is, really calls us to wake up to the realities that we already had before it, in terms of the society not being an equal one, where we really have to look after one another and see how to balance that. And I think in terms of responding to it, we need to see how to include strengthening the immune system, nutrition and food security into the response, in terms of preventing us getting the disease or preventing the illness to become severe, mitigating it, so what do we do when we have it, what strengthens our immune system, and thirdly, the response, the recovery. So what do we do afterwards? How can we keep the momentum, and how can we ensure we really learned lessons and keep healthier or keep better prepared as we will go out of COVID-19 situation eventually. So this would be my final words, and yeah, let's keep healthy and safe.
Okay, thank you. And Mrs. Keita, would you also like to give your final remarks?
Yeah, he actually said most of the things, but I would like to say, keep on eating a healthy diet. As far as possible, make sure that you get a variety of food. Ask for help if you need help. Follow guidelines on food safety, that you don't make the situation worse, that you actually keep a good, healthy immune system by also practicing good food safety. Take all the rules and regulations and guidelines and advice given through the proper channels that are fact-checked. Make sure that you follow them. They are there to help and to secure us and to make our life actually easier, not more difficult. Specifically, take care of yourself when you go out to shop, because that's now, you've been cocooned in your house and now suddenly you go out in a bigger environment. Follow the guidelines there. Make sure that you go alone, that you wear a mask, that you wash your hands when you go into the shop, you get out of the shop, get home, use also reusable bags that you actually can wash. So yeah, and keep your distance. And especially with the markets that are opening today, listen to the people there that are there to guide you. They are there because they want to make sure that you all are here next year after COVID. I thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. There you have it, Namibia. That was a discussion that we had this morning on the topic nutrition and food security during COVID-19. The panel this morning was Mrs. Charlotte Keita, who is a nutritionist and a senior lecturer at the University of Namibia. She's also serving as a board member or a founding board member of Nutrition and Food Security Alliance of Namibia. She was joined by Mr. Ben Shanik, a social worker by profession, and he is currently the director of the Secretariat of the Nutrition and Food Security Alliance of Namibia. Join us again this afternoon as we unpack the issue related to youth and how they are coping with COVID-19, mental health, youth unemployment, youth and substance abuse, and launch of the Youth Week. So if you have any questions, please do call the toll-free number 0800 100 100 to report anything related to health and COVID-19. And you may send your questions as well via email to covid.num@mict.gov.na. From me, Tutu Haukena, and the rest of the crew here at the Communication Center, thank you for joining us and have a blessed day.
Hi, I'm Anna, and I'm a doctor. So I hope you're watching this from the confinements of your home. And if not, you should probably go home right now. Help us to fight COVID-19. And to do this, you can take simple measures. Practice good hand washing techniques. You can also wear the appropriate protective gear, and then self-isolation. Now, I know that self-isolation sounds like a nuisance, but you know what's worse? Contracting as well as spreading the disease. So help us in fighting this disease. And finally, be responsible. If you're having symptoms, call the hotline and then go for testing. Help us to fight this.